Good evening. So happy to get to talk to you tonight about 5 tips to master your marketing systems. Melanie and I have been taking wonderful training, and so we're going to split up the training and relay what we've been learning back to you. So we've got 5 tips that we're going to share tonight. 5 tips, okay? And so I'm going to do the first two. The first one is that you need to pick a platform. Okay. So it's either most people are going to pick Instagram or Facebook. I feel like that's where most of us um, are present. So pick one of those to specialize in because, you can't do everything with excellence. So what we're after is excellence, not just putting up a post for the sake of putting something up, but we're looking for excellence. So you're going to pick your platform. If things are going great on Facebook, stay there and just implement some of these things that you're going to learn. Don't feel pressured to switch um, platforms. Okay. But if you feel like you've kind of fizzled on Facebook and you want to grow on Instagram, then this is a great time to try that also. Okay. So that was your first tip is to pick your platform. All right. And your second tip here is about consistency. So determine now how many posts can you commit to each week. So maybe that's 4, maybe that's 5. And again, what we're after is quality over quantity, right? It's much better to put out 3 or 4 really good quality posts than just slapping up 7 that you've copy and pasted from somebody else, right? Okay, so decide, you don't have to decide it right this minute, but take some time, think about it. How many can you realistically commit to every week? All right, and then I'll pass it to Melanie because she has some um, good information on how to break down your content.
All right. Thanks, Beth. Yes. Okay. So we're going to continue expanding on what Beth is talking about as far as the consistency, like choosing how many posts per week or per month that you're going to commit to. And so what we're going to talk about is the content breakdown, how you're going to break down those 4 to 5 posts a week. Okay. And so what they taught us is called the 50-30-20 rule. Okay. So let's just say you're going to commit to 5 posts a week or for a total of 20 a month. However you break that down, you're going to do 20 a month. Okay. So with the 50-30-20 rule, what we're going to do is 50% of those need to be for growing your audience. So that would be 10. Let's just say you're doing 20. So 10 posts would be growing your audience. 30% would be growing your brand. And then 20% is selling. Okay. So let's break that down. So if you're doing if you commit to 20 posts for the month and your 50% is growing your audience, so 10 posts for the month. When they talk about growing your audience, it needs to be things that are highly shareable. They said highly shareable content, things that if someone sees your post, they want to share it. Maybe they have a best friends chat and they're like, oh my gosh, girl, you got to see this. And they share it to the chat, or they share it on their page, or they share it to their stories. Highly shareable content is going to be 50% of the posts that you post for the month. Okay. Now 30%. So if you're doing 20, that would be 6 of your posts for the month. Okay. Need to be about growing your brand. And so your brand is not Plexus. Your brand is you. What draws people to you? Things like your lifestyle, or maybe you post about mom life, teacher life. Maybe I would post about chiropractic. Like things that encompass you. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that here in a few minutes. But that is what's growing your brand. Okay. Your brand is you, your face. Okay. It's not Plexus is not your brand. And then 20% of your posts. So if you were doing 20 posts for the month, four posts, okay, would be about selling. Okay. Talking about the latest offer from Plexus, things like that. Okay. And one thing I thought was neat that Rebecca mentioned is she times those around paydays. Okay. Fridays when people get paid, right? That's when we need to, it's a whole concept that you have to start thinking about and planning ahead. This whole thing is about planning your content in advance. So 20% would be about selling. They talk about with the branding, that 30% is all about the like, know, trust factor. Branding yourself is getting people to like you, know you, and trust you. Okay. So make sure I threw that in there because I really liked how they said that. So, moving on from there, your content, we've all heard about niche, having a niche, right? And niche accounts, they say 75 to 80% of niche accounts post about the same type of thing. It's all about one specific thing or topic, okay? Or, and if you didn't want to have a niche account, you could have what they call pillars, okay? Content pillars. And those are 3 to 5 things that you would post about on a regular basis, okay? And so think about it like this. If you were to step into a room of 50 people and you had to talk about a topic, what's something you feel like you could really talk about with people? You know, maybe it's fashion, maybe it's aging gracefully, like whatever you feel like you could talk about with people in a room of like 50 people. What are you passionate about? What lights you up? They said it's things that people can relate to, common ground that you have with people. Okay. So those pillars go back to your brand. It's all linked together. So those 3 to 5 things that you're posting about on a regular basis, that is your brand. And so your brand, your 3 to 5 things would be completely different than my 3 to 5 things, right? So what we want to do is start thinking about what are the 3 to 5 things that I could post about regularly. And then those would be the things that I would plug into that 30% to grow my brand. Does that make sense? Hopefully. So I'm not sure if I missed any tips on that. I just want to make sure with that I didn't miss anything there.
Well, one thing I would add is that this is where Facebook and Instagram are a little bit different. When we talk about we want highly shareable content, that is more towards Instagram. For Facebook, it's more about engagement. I heard that clarification today.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I mean, we still want our content shared because that's really a compliment, I think, to get something shared. But ultimately, see, we're talking about the algorithm, and so what boosts the algorithm on Facebook, we know, is the engagement. But on Instagram, it's the sharing of your content.
Right.
Okay, so hopefully that helps a
So
little.
tip 1, pick your platform. Tip 2, consistency, deciding how many posts per week or month I'm going to consistently post. And then tip 3 is your content breakdown, the 50-30-20 rule. And then tip 4 is deciding, do you want to have a niche account or a content pillar account? And so then Beth's going to head it back over to her. She's going to talk to you about tip number 5.
Okay, this is called the 13x4 formula. And I think Melanie was going to share her screen, and so we can kind of take a look at it. This was like genius. And, you know, it's one of those things that made so much sense to me when I heard it but now to relay it back to you, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. Okay. All right. So this is where your Chat GPT app is going to come into play. Okay. So what you're going to do is you are going to ask okay, let's just pretend you've decided on your pillars, and let's just say one of the pillars is gardening. Okay. So you're going to go to your Chat GPT app and you're going to ask it, what are 13 commonly asked questions about gardening? Okay. And then it's going to come up with, seriously, 13 questions, 13 commonly asked questions. And the reason why we want commonly asked questions is because we want to add value to our audience, right? If one person has that question, then many people have that question, right? Okay, so you've got your 13 questions about gardening. And then you're going to, this is where it gets a little tricky, you're going to, under the first, let's say the first question was, what are the best plants for beginners? Okay, let's say that's the first question. All right, then you're going to find 4 more, you're going to answer that question 4 different ways. Okay, so I went and I asked Chat GPT, what are the 4 best plants for beginning gardeners? And I came up with tomatoes, and then it even tells me why. It says they're relatively easy to grow, produce abundant fruit, and can be grown in containers or in the ground, blah, blah, blah. All right, the second one is basil. The third one is lettuce, and the fourth one is marigolds. Okay, so I have 4 things that I can post about underneath my pillar of gardening. So one week I can do some content on tomatoes and why they are easy to plant for a beginning gardener. So if you take 13, you have 13 questions, and underneath each of those you have 4 questions. 13 times 4 is 52 pieces of content that you can post throughout the year. So you have 1 for every single week. I hope that makes sense. It's a lot. After you think about it, it is a lot to absorb, but after you think about it, it makes perfect sense. So like if you have 3 pillars, you could do this exercise on each pillar, and you have all kinds of content available for you. So I don't know. I hope that makes sense.
If you're like me, like you struggle with what am I going to post about today? And I feel like I get into that. I'm just going and finding something somebody else posted and then I copy paste and change it up a little bit. But this is unique. This is how you're going to start branding yourself. This is how somebody's going to say, oh my gosh, I love following Beth because she posts about gardening for beginners. And then they're going to start sharing her stuff with their gardening friends, and so it builds their audience. And especially for a lot of us who've, been in this industry a long time, our warm market, like we need fresh people, fresh eyes, right? So I loved the 13 by 4 because
Love it. I think you'll find your people too. I think you'll find your people.
Yeah, people that have that common ground with you. And that's the whole point of marketing and branding yourself. It's to find common ground. Think about Amy, she's a librarian. So that kind of situation where people are drawn to her because of her knowledge of that. And so we all need to find those pillars that attract people to us. So I hope these tips have been helpful. It's been an amazing training for us. So anything else you want to say, Beth, before I end our recording?
I'm just looking forward to further working with you, absorbing this information and seeing the difference and watching your social media and what you do with it.
Yep, I agree.